A troubled childhood. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, to Eleanor Louise Cowell, who was unmarried at the time. Bundy was raised to believe that his grandparents were his parents and that his mother was his sister, a fact that would later contribute to feelings of abandonment and confusion. From an early age, Bundy showed signs of a troubled mind. He had a fascination with knives and was known to peer into windows late at night, behaviors that would foreshadow the darkness that lay ahead. Despite these early warning signs, Bundy's life seemed to follow a normal trajectory. Bundy excelled academically and was well liked by his peers. After high school, he attended the University of Washington, where he stood out for his intelligence and charm. However, beneath Bundy's charming exterior lay a dark and twisted mind that would ultimately lead to a series of brutal murders. The beginning of a killing spree. In the early 1970s, young women began disappearing in the Pacific Northwest, sparking fear and confusion among residents. Bundy, who had by then moved to Seattle to attend law school, quickly became a suspect in these disappearances. Bundy's first known victims were Kathy Devine and Brenda Ball, two young women who disappeared from the same area in Washington. Their bodies were never found, but Bundy later confessed to their murders. As the police began to connect the dots, more horrifying details emerged. Jorgen Hawkins, a student at the University of Washington, disappeared while walking home from a sorority event. Her remains were found near Issaquah, Washington. Janice Ott and Denise Naslund disappeared on the same day from Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. Their remains were found months later in a nearby wooded area. The hunt for Bundy. With each new disappearance, the pressure mounted on law enforcement to catch the elusive killer. Survivors of Bundy's attacks provided harrowing accounts of their encounters with him, describing how he lured them into his car before assaulting them. Physical evidence, including hair and fibers, linked Bundy to multiple murders. Bundy's killing spree continued unabated as he moved across state lines, leaving a trail of death and destruction in his wake. Nancy Wilcox disappeared from Holiday, Utah, and although her remains were never found, Bundy confessed to her murder. Melissa Smith disappeared from Midville, Utah, and her body was found in a remote area 9 days later. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Bundy maintained his innocence. He represented himself in court and used his charm to manipulate the proceedings, leading to several close calls where it seemed he might escape justice. The confession and execution. In 1979, Bundy was convicted of the murders of two Florida State University sorority sisters and a 12-year-old girl. He was sentenced to death. Throughout his trial and incarceration, Bundy continued to deny his guilt, even as the evidence against him grew stronger. But in 1989, facing overwhelming evidence and the imminent prospect of execution, Bundy finally confessed to 30 murders committed between 1974 and 1978. He detailed his crimes in chilling detail, providing insight into the mind of a serial killer. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. His death marked the end of a reign of terror that had spanned several states and claimed the lives of dozens of young women. The stories of Bundy's victims, Kathy Devine and Brenda Ball, two young women who disappeared from the same area in Washington. Their bodies were never found, but Bundy later confessed to their murders. Jorgen Hawkins, a student at the University of Washington who disappeared while walking home from a sorority event. Her remains were found near Issaquah, Washington. Janice Ott and Denise Naslund, two young women who disappeared on the same day from Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. Their remains were found months later in a nearby wooded area. Nancy Wilcox disappeared from Holiday, Utah. Although her remains were never found, Bundy confessed to her murder. Melissa Smith disappeared from Midvale, Utah, and her body was found in a remote area 9 days later. Each of Bundy's victims had a story, a life cut short by a man whose twisted desires knew no bounds. The case of Ted Bundy continues to captivate and horrify the public to this day. His ability to blend in with society, coupled with the brutality of his crimes, has left a lasting impact on the world of true crime. Bundy's story serves as a stark reminder that evil can lurk behind even the most charming facade. As the years have passed, Bundy's victims have not been forgotten. Their families and loved ones continue to mourn their loss and seek justice for the lives that were taken too soon. Bundy may be gone, but the scars he left behind will never fully heal.